Hello everybody and welcome back to Reimagining Cyber. I'm Ben and today we're talking about something that honestly sounds like science fiction, but apparently it's not anymore because Google says it may have detected the first real-world case of threat actors using AI assistance during the development of a zero-day exploit. Now, before everybody imagines Skynet writing malware in a basement somewhere, we wanted to unpack what actually happened, what Google found, and whether this is truly a major turning point in cybersecurity or just another overhyped AI headline. Joining me is Tyler Moffitt, Senior Security Analyst at OpenText Cybersecurity. Tyler, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. Definitely an interesting one to talk about today. It basically just happened. But I'd say it's important to not go too hype or overblown because the wording is really what matters a lot. The headlines obviously took over this and everybody's talking about it. So we got to talk about it. But basically, they made it sound like AI independently discovered a vulnerability and wrote an exploit and launched attacks and became, cybercriminal overnight. But no, that's not what happened. Basically, Google's threat intelligence group found indicators, suggesting that attackers likely used LLMs and AI assistants during exploit development process. They found things like hallucinated vulnerability references that didn't exist. That's totally like a marker of AI. We've all had AI hallucinate and just make something up. Weirdly structured comments, formatting patterns that look like AI generated, which I get it. Totally. It's just criminals using AI as an assistant to do it, right? AI probably helped accelerate the research, right? The troubleshooting, the scripting, refinement, whatever, proof of concept generation, all that type of jazz. And so humans are still driving, they're still in the driver's seat, they're running the operation. And so it's still a huge deal, don't get me wrong. But the story here is not AI is replacing hackers and they're already going and running cycles themselves and generating AI exploits, which is kind of the impression people got. But it's just AI is making the average bad guy way more faster and capable.
So less robot hacker, more criminal with a very powerful assistant, if you like.
Yeah, basically. That's more dangerous in the near term, to be honest, right? These elite nation state exploit developers usually sitting on tons of exploits ready to use as they need to go after whatever their agendas are. Top tier offensive researchers, they already have this stuff under the belt and know how to do it, right? Now we're talking about mid-tier criminals who now have access to tools to make them higher level, right? And reduce the skill barrier. We're scaling, right? And that's where things can get dicey.
And I think that's the part that many people may miss. The technology doesn't have to be perfect if it speeds things up.
Yeah, definitely. Attackers, in order to scale, they don't need perfection. If they can just get, iterate faster. The biggest thing I think AI changes, in cybersecurity and everything, to be honest, is just velocity, right? We talk about the singularity. It's accelerating acceleration. And we're living through it day by day. So traditionally exploit development required a highly specialized skill set, vulnerability research, reverse engineering, debugging, bypass development, scripting, knowing your kernel developer, really, really skilled stuff. And now AI can help with all that stuff, or pieces of it, right? Even if your output is only partially correct, again, not perfect, attackers can keep refining what they get and the results, the prompts, you name it, testing iterations better and faster than before. So that timeline between vulnerability discovery and actual development and proof of concept to then active attacks, that sometimes could take months to a years. And you'd hear about disclosures at security conferences, and it took months, to a year. And now that's basically compressing. And defenders are going to struggle to patch fast enough.
And we've talked so many times before on Reimagining Cyber about patching delays being one of the biggest problems that organizations face.
Yeah, cybersecurity vegetables. Are you eating them? This is like the biggest thing we still talk about. I mean, uh, many of the successful ransomware campaigns out there, some of the groups out there specifically like Target, predominantly maybe certain industries like healthcare or education. And it's not because they want to go after hospitals or they want to go after schools, but it's because they go after hardware that has, exploits that aren't being patched, and they're just targeting their guaranteed way in that works every time. And when they do that, they're sort of blind when they're scanning and finding this hardware, finding these exploits that allows them in. They don't know who they've hit. It just happens to be once they, get the data for data exfiltration and ransomware, that it's predominantly, healthcare and education. Reading around the bush, I'm specifically talking about Akira, but they weren't trying to go after hospitals. It just happened to be who they ended up hitting because these, healthcare industries were the ones predominantly running this hardware that was exploitable. And that's a problem, right? It's very real because, it's cybersecurity vegetables, the cyber resiliency. It's like doing the basics, right? We talked about, I think, in our 200 episode recap. Um, the headlines change, right? But the way the attackers are ultimately getting in is kind of the same. And the AI assistance here is tough because it's more scalable, and that's really what organizations should care about, right?
One phrase that seems to be used a lot lately is AI as a force multiplier. Um, does that feel like the right way to think about this to you? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, especially for right now, it's like it's augmenting, right? I know, I think Microsoft's there. It's called Copilot. It's an apt name because that is really what it's doing, right? It's augmenting the human, right? That's how we see it, and especially with cybercrime right now, where it's assisting in accelerating of the scale of phishing kits, ransomware as a service, cybercrime marketplaces, the info stealers, plug and play attack ecosystems. I mean, this is just the first stage that it can sort of help with, right? In the next evolution, it lowers the friction, and cybercrime historically scales incredibly fast anytime friction gets reduced, probably faster than defenders, right? And that's why this matters, because AI is not suddenly sentient and going through and making these 0 days and attacking people with them. It's just making cybercrime cheaper, faster, more accessible, just easy. Any guy can just raise his hand and be like, "Yeah, I want to do crime now," and given the tools and now AI, and they're like becoming way more powerful than they were normally, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not saying we're quite level to the top tier of nation state, but we're getting closer, and that gap is closing and compressing, and that's something that is very concerning.
So we know then that you can be a lower skilled attacker, and AI potentially, well, it does help you punch above your weight, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And the things that we need to be concerned about, right? Um, you don't want every criminal becoming like elite tier, or just even average guys becoming more efficient, right? That that scales and adds volume, more attacks, more leverage, more downtime, more problem, the landscape getting scarier. That's what we're talking about here.
Okay, let's try and find some good news amongst this then. A bit of good news anyway. Defenders are also using AI. Google talked about their big sleep project as well, didn't they?
Yeah, so I guess this is where, trying the conversation get more balanced. AIs are, being leveraged by defenders as well. And the big sleep project that you mentioned, what it did is identified a real world like SQLite vulnerability before widespread exploitation occurred. And I mean, that's pretty significant, right? You're entering the environment where, or we've entered it. Attackers use AI to accelerate attacks, and defenders are using AI to accelerate detection and response. This feedback loop cycle, cyclone, tornado, whatever you want to call it, This is what we're living with right now, and that is what I expect to escalate. Right? It's AI versus AI, and good vs bad, team red, team blue, whatever, going back at each other. But humans are still driving both sides, if that makes sense. Right now, currently.
And I think that's a really important distinction you make there because online discussions, they immediately jump to AI hackers are taking over.
Yeah, I mean that's headlines though. That's what they do. They jump, they go after clicks, right? And so it's our job to distill it, bring us down to the ground, and humans are still absolutely the focal point, matter enormously when you're talking about targeting operational security, generating and creating the infrastructure, your campaign management, monetization, social engineering, all that stuff, right? AI is not replacing those people, um, right? It's just augmenting them, right? At least right now.
So then, if I'm listening to this as an IT leader or security team, what is the practical takeaway here? What should organizations actually do differently?
Well, actually, I would say that the fundamentals are key here, and I talk about that a lot. But like, it really does matter, because the story sounds like you said, you led with Skynet, and people are thinking, "Oh, this is the start. This is what we're seeing." Sounds very futuristic, right? But the defensive recommendations that I have are going to sound pretty familiar, right? You got to have the cybersecurity vegetables and make sure you've got a patch plan that you're patching regularly, right? That you're not leaving that stuff exposed for months. Most of the people hit by some of these gangs here that would like predominantly go after certain industries that ran this type of hardware, we're talking months to like almost a year out. And so like that's on you. I mean, I'm not saying I'm with the bad guys here, but if you are leaving something so critical as far as a backdoor and it's months to potentially a year, like that's on you, right? You got to improve the visibility, strengthen, your patch cadence or identity. Identity is the new perimeter. Make sure you strengthen that to reduce your attack surface, right? Layer defense. These are really important things. No individual layer is going to be 100% effectiveness. And anyone trying to sell you a certain layer saying, "Oh yeah, we catch all attacks," or 100%, like they're selling snake oil. So go the other way from that person. It's defense in depth, having multiple layers, and understanding that each one of those layers reduces X amount, and then combining that to get as close as you can to zero, but you'll never achieve 0% infection rate. You want to be under the assumption that, when it will happen, not if it will happen. This is like cyber resilience posture 101, right? Because attackers are moving faster, it means defenders need to reduce those response timelines too. And so, identity security, I would say, probably the most important or in the limelight right now, because we say it constantly. Attackers are logging in; they're not breaking in anymore, and so AI-assisted attacks don't really bypass the importance of MFA. Privileged access controls, segmentation, monitoring; those things are still matter tremendously.
So then we've not hit a throw away your security strategy moment. That's not where we are.
No, I don't think we'll get there anytime soon. They should just reinforce these existing best security practices. But organizations need to start the assumption. Like I said, this tornado is it's gonna escalate. So the pace of attacks is gonna continue accelerating. That's the real shift that we should talk about.
Do you think that, if we look back on this story a few years from now, do you think we'll look at it as some kind of major turning point?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't think so. Maybe not this exact point. We might see something bigger, if that makes sense. But honestly, like this is just an early indicator, rather than like some single breakthrough moment that everybody remembers, like a WannaCry or something like that, where they combined worm-like capability with ransomware. We've already seen AI used for phishing, scripting, social engineering, reconnaissance, deepfakes, just automation in general, right? So exploit development, it's kind of like, it's not a surprise. That's the next logical step. So I guess like the next bigger takeaway is AI is going to steadily embed itself across the entire cybercrime ecosystem, wherever you think it could go. that it can help, scale, it's going to. And that trend is like I said, probably going to continue until an actual big moment happens.
Which means, I guess, that defenders just need to adapt just as quickly.
Yeah, they're scaling, you got to scale just as well. They're accelerating, you got to accelerate as well. Attackers don't need AI to be perfect, right? They just need to make them faster. And so we're at a position now where it's just speed matters probably the most in cybersecurity right now.
Indeed. Well, Tyler, definitely one of the more fascinating stories we've covered recently. It sits right on the line between emerging technology and those very real world security implications. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Definitely wanted to cover this one because everybody and their mother is talking about it, like it's AI Skynet and, AI's by itself. And so I wanted to make sure we brought everybody down to earth and really, unpack what's actually going on.
You're absolutely right. It's all my mother talks about. Oh, she's going on about this all the time, driving me crazy. Anyway, Tyler, thanks so much. And thanks to everybody listening to Reimagining Cyber. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with your colleagues, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.